bonjour et bienvenue dans l'épisode 323 de Random Encounter.
Not bad.
Is it not bad? Okay. Anyway,
Not good,
hello
but not
everybody. Not good, but not bad. It's funny, when I was in France and I would try to speak French, they would usually just say, and French people are actually very nice if you try to speak French. I would try to speak French and they'd be like, no, English is better. So anyway, hi everyone. Welcome to episode 323 of Random Encounter.
Oh,
Hello.
wait.
No, it's good. We welcome cats on RPG Fan Podcasts. And as you can tell, I am not Jono, and I also can't speak French, but I am Zach, Zach Wilkerson, and I'm here today to host Random Encounter. And the reason that I'm here today to host Random Encounter is that we're actually, the style of episode we're about to do used to be something that was sort of in Retro Encounters wheelhouse. If you don't listen to Retro Encounter, maybe you shouldn't because I host it, but it's our podcast about retro things. And I host that. One of the things that we used to do on Retro Encounter was Spoilercasts. Sort of if Solosi, our host at the time, had a game he really wanted to talk about and it was new, we talked about it. And so we thought that as we were going to a bi-weekly format with Retro Encounter, Spoilercasts made more sense in Random Encounter's wheelhouse. And so here we are. And as you could probably guess, we are here today to talk about the new hotness, Clair Obscur Expedition 33. And if conversations beforehand are any indication, it's going to be a positive one. So if you're a Random Encounter listener and you've never listened to Spoilercast, just be very aware, if you have not played Expedition 33 yet, stop listening right now. Unless you really don't care about spoilers, which I don't care that much, but just go play the game. It's worth it, I promise. But anyway, that's enough for me. Before we get into talking about this amazing game, let me go ahead and introduce the panel, starting with you, Aleks.
Bonjour, mes amis.
See, that's pretty good. But Aleks did French immersion, so I hope so. And Tin.
Hi.
And Zach.
Oh.
And Matt Wardell.
Merci beaucoup for having me.
See, I was better than that, at least. Oui. Expedition 33 is like it's a game that I remember. I was at Summer Game Fest last summer, and I was sitting in the hotel room, just sort of in between things, and I was watching the Xbox showcase. And as I'm watching the Xbox showcase, this thing comes on, and I hear Ben Starr's voice, and I'm like, "Ooh, Ben Starr! I like Ben Starr." And then I watch this trailer, and I'm like, "What is this video game, and why did they make it for me?" Like, this music rips. This combat looks so cool. This looks awesome. And so I was excited about it, but oh man, did this game exceed my expectations. So I just very quickly, before we get into sort of the history of Sandfall and sort of talking about the background there, like, sort of what was your initial impression? How did you first hear about it? Were you guys all watching that showcase and thinking like, oh my gosh, what is this new beautiful thing?
Honestly, this wasn't even on my radar until I saw Zach's review, and then when I saw the score, I'm like, "Hello, what's this?" And it's the only thing I have seen online since then.
I was talking to John about it, and like before the preview, and we're like, "This game can't be good, right?" So he wanted me to kind of just see how it is in the preview, and I wanted to be objective about it, and it really was that good.
For me, it was actually that episode we did with Jono and you, Zach, and I think it was Wes, where we were looking at like the most anticipated games of the year, and I hadn't heard of it up to that point, but you were already raving about it, like having spotted it as something that is definitely marketed specifically towards you. And I looked more into it, and I'm like, this does look really cool. And I had definitely had my eye on it. It was announced that it was coming day one Game Pass, so I'm like, oh, of course I'll at least check it out. But yeah, it completely exceeded my expectations as well.
Yeah, and I think that, like, sort of looking at the history of Sandfall, I think makes what this game is like sort of even more remarkable, because basically it starts as like the brainchild of this dude named Guillaume Broche. I probably mispronounced that, whatever. he is like basically like working on the business side at Ubisoft in France. And he gets bored and he's like, I want to kind of figure out how to use Unreal 5. And so then he goes and he starts working on Unreal 5. He gets in touch with a friend of his who's never worked in game dev, and then they sort of form Sandfall. And then also very early in that process, he's looking for composers and he's just like scrolling through SoundCloud. There's this dude named Lorien Testar who is like just making like video game music and just kind of posting on SoundCloud and like these random forums. And he's like, hey, dude, want to like compose some music for us? And he's like, sure. And the writer, Jennifer Svedbergen, originally was cast as a voice actress. And she starts talking to Guillaume, and eventually they realize that there's sort of like simpatico in terms of storytelling. And after they get some investment, they end up sort of ditching this original idea of it being like this London steampunk thing. You can go see the original trailer for it. It's really cool. You can actually go in and see Broch's like whole Reddit history, and he's posting like speed kills of Virgil and DMC5. It's like, this dude rules. Then it just sort of takes off from there. And it's just like, I think it's a testament to it's just like people who are like-minded, who have a passion. And these are all people who have never either like they've worked a little bit on video games, but they come out so confidently. And like it turns out like the story idea is sort of a mix of Broch liked like this belly pock painting, and it was a mix of like an idea that Svedbergen had as a short story about someone who could paint and go into their own canvases. And just like the combination of different factors that go into creating this game, I think are just fascinating. And like the parry mechanic basically just turns out that Broch was like playing Sekiro when he starts developing it. He's like, this is cool, I want to kind of try it, because it was originally supposed to be like a traditional turn-based RPG. And they start playing around with it, and then some of the other developers are like, hey, you ever played Paper Mario? And he's like, he goes and does that. And like just like the discovery and the joy of creation of this game, which becomes very important to the themes of this game, I think is really fascinating.
Yeah, not to jump ahead like to the end of the episode, but it does make me a little bit, concerned about the future, like what's next for this studio, because this team was assembled for this game, right? They're like the Expendables or like the Suicide, mission from Mass Effect 2. It's like you made this perfect team and made this perfect product. What's next? Like I'm eagerly awaiting whatever they're gonna do after this, but let's talk about this first.
Yeah, and I mean, next time somebody says nothing good has come out of Ubisoft lately, you can point towards this and how the dissatisfied conditions of the workers there led to this amazing product being made. So there we go. Thanks, Ubisoft.
Yeah, it's it's because I think like half of the sort of the core team ends up coming from Ubisoft, and there's some argument about like it wasn't just 30 people, blah blah blah. I don't want to get into all that, but um it's just like I think an extremely cool uh story of what a game is like. And I share some of your concerns as well, Matt, but we'll talk more about that sort of towards the end. But let's actually talk about the game. And I want to talk about the prologue. And I don't really want to say much about the prologue, but this first hour comes out so strongly, so confidently, where you get sort of the history. It's amazing how they do the world building so well in this hour, where you understand very quickly without really being directly told. You can see the European influences in the storytelling, where they'll respect your intelligence, and it's a thing that I really like about this game. Where you're introduced to Gustav and Mael, you don't no one ever tells you what their relationship is directly, but you kind of get a feel for it. You discover that he has this ex-girlfriend named Sophie, and then you sort of very quickly realize that she is about to be gommaged. She's about to disappear because the paintress is going to paint the number 33 on the monolith off in the distance from the city of Lumiere. And so like Gustav and Sophie get to share sort of a last afternoon together before this. But like the way that the NPC dialogue here, I think, is really interesting. There's some really funny things you can do. You can meet a dude in a trash can. He's trying to avoid being gommaged, and he thinks if he hides in a trash can for 6 months that he won't be gommaged. And then if you come back to that trash can at the very end, he leaves a note saying, "Nope, I was wrong. I still was gommaged. Here is
Oh.
this best upgrade material in the game, one of the very few 33 upgrade materials if you did that." There's some other fun stuff too, like you can go get like an Esquie statue painted if you want. And it all shows up at the end when you come back to Lumiere. But really, it is the prologue itself, it's so confident, so beautiful, so heartbreaking, but it captures the spirit of this game so well. So I'm gonna let you guys talk about the prologue.
Another thing that stood out for me was I forget how they phrased it, but the enjoyer of life behind closed doors, the couple having an intimate moment. Is that right? And you can listen and listen and listen, and if you listen enough times, to their love making, the guy will go like, "Okay, okay, it's a little bit creepy now. Like, what are you standing there listening for?" But yeah, I loved the prologue. I had heard the concept of this game, and like that was enough to draw me in. But I knew that like when the Gomage scene was coming up, like on the harbor front, I thought like, okay, this is gonna make or break the game for me personally. Like, this is gonna tell whether I'm invested or not. And I think that the scene where everyone is erased, right? That was for me the most emotional scene in the entire game, even more so than the ending. I think they nailed that and like set the tone perfectly right, and they developed that sense of urgency that really propelled the whole story forward. But yeah, but before the harborfront scene, like beautiful setting, like the realization of not Paris Lumiere, like yeah, very very beautiful.
Yeah. So when we received the review code, it was, I guess, like Savage Week in like Final Fantasy 14. So like I finished that. I kind of had the week off, and I was trying to catch up on sleep. But like we received a review code, I finished the prologue, and I just, I guess I wasn't sleeping.
Yeah, it really does, like, this whole section starts doing what the game does really well in terms of storytelling, like you were describing, Zach, like not explaining lore details, bringing up like very personal issues between characters in like a subtle but meaningful way, like when Gustav and Sophie are even just talking about, like, there's this allusion to like the fact that they had fights or have at least like, or at least conflict about the idea of like having kids in this kind of world where everybody might end up just being gommaged in the end. um just like a really good like emotional starting point, done very well, very economically. And beyond that, I this whole section also just kind of reminded me of Millennial Fair in Chrono Trigger, where it's like
Mm.
you just control like a boy and a girl who gathered for like the significant event where the story's inciting incident happens. You kind of can delay the actual story moment to just do like these like kind of goofy side activities. And really like that was the starting point of me kind of thinking of this game as the sort of modern day Chrono Trigger, because man, it just hits so well. Everybody who's played it like seems to just love it. It synthesizes all of these like great elements from previous RPGs that have come out, in a way that just feels natural, and it's breezy to play. It doesn't overstay its welcome. I just yeah, I'm getting a little bit off topic here, but yeah, this was the point where I'm just like, oh yeah, this is something special already.
Alex, you beat me. You beat me to it. I was supposed to mention that that was also my initial impression, that it reminded me of the Millennial Fair as well. I guess a lot of Chrono Trigger fans would think of it that way. And yeah, apart from that, uh I, it also kind of remind me of my playthrough with Xenoblade Chronicles 3, without giving any
Oh
spoilers.
yeah, there's so much Xenoblade Chronicles 3. This is like I've seen people meme it as Xenoblade Chronicles 4, and I'm like, there's some themes there. You are not wrong.
Yeah, exactly. And I guess also the whole expedition vibe was also reminded me a lot from watching Attack on Titan. So yeah, those were generally my impressions at first.
I think it's fascinating that you guys talk about the Chrono Trigger comparison because that's actually not something that ever occurred to me. But especially given that Chrono Trigger has to be outside of maybe Earthbound, the game that people are like, this game is inspired by Chrono Trigger. This game is inspired by Earthbound, and they don't. I mean, like some of the other inspirations, I think they wear on their sleeve more. We'll talk about some of those, even some games that aren't good that they managed to take those ideas and make them good, like Lost Odyssey.
Oh
Um,
God, saw that one coming.
You're right. I mean, like it pulls together all these ideas from other places, the same way Chrono Trigger does, but with like a very different team, right? Like in that case, you had masters of the craft doing it here. Now you have people who are first starting on their craft. I just think that's a really fascinating dynamic.
I will say it is interesting as well because for me, it didn't remind me of anything. It was just so unique, like just in my opinion, that like I was just hooked from the start. I wasn't like thinking of any other game.
And I think like even though it was like their first effort, the studio, like they come out swinging. I mean, like the very first visual that you see is like this beautiful city, like swept with red and white petals. Like everything is just done like so lavishly. Like and there's no boring looking area, like and especially not in the very very beginning. But
Yeah.
I'm shocked though. Like I've seen some people talking online, like, "Oh, I almost dropped it after that first hour. Like nothing happened. It was so boring." I'm like, "What are you talking about?" Like,
I want their name and I want their address and I want to
yeah,
never speak to this person.
I know. I'm like, "What are you expecting? Like Contra 3 or something? Like just like guns blazing out the gate?" But yeah, I thought it was a fantastically paced and scripted beginning that made me care about like, this is what we're fighting for. And I think Alex, like you said, like for me emotionally, like the thing with Gustav and Sophie about like not wanting to have kids and he wants to have kids, like, and he's got his little apprentices running around, that hit really close to home. And like I think a lot of people could relate to that just because the fact that unlike most JRPGs, this is like the protagonists are all like 30, you know they're all like in their 30s and they're
But they're still
young.
old.
They're ancient. I mean, yeah, they're like they're young enough to be spry, but they're also like old enough to have like a storied history themselves, which you gradually unveil as the game goes on. But like, yeah, they don't beat you over the head with like they broke up because they couldn't have baby. Like, it's very subtly done, like a lot of the story in this game. So yeah, I was really impressed.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that really struck me in the early going here, outside of the voice acting, which obviously is incredible, Charlie Cox, great work. Jennifer English, I mean, like, she's going to be in a Game of the Year winner again after Elden Ring and then Baldur's Gate 3. And I just think the writing is really strong. Like that very opening scene between Gustav and Mael, like their rapport is so easy. It's fun. It's not over the top, quirky, witty banter. It's like this is like people who like know each other, love each other. And I think that the other thing I want to touch on too is that like I love that you guys are talking about that relationship between Gustav and Sophie. And one of the themes of this game is like that neither of them are right in that argument, right?
Mm.
Neither of them are in the right. There is throughout this entire game, you have people who have sort of their opinion about how to approach something. And that opinion is driven usually by love for family, for people around them. And it's never easy. And that, obviously sort of crescendos into the very final choice that you have to make. And I think that even just setting it up here and so many of these dynamics that we see mirrored through the non-painter world into this, and then it's just the relationship between Mael and Gustav being sort of a brother relationship that you see, sort of mirrored later. And it's all sort of set up here in this opening hour.
And isn't it crazy that you never see like 99% of those NPCs ever again? And like they feel like they have like it feels like it's almost like a sequel to like, did I miss a game before this? Like all the history between Gustav and Sophie and these other characters in Lumiere. And I love that it just like culminates in the harbor scene of like it made me think of like the Toy Story 3 like furnace scene where it's like death is coming, like all our past strife is put aside, hold me kind of thing, like I thought that was a really powerful moment.
Yeah, and I don't want to get too deep into this now because its time will come. But especially after, like, in the context of having seen the ending, like, I appreciate this prologue even more because I think it's so important the way that it sets up like the trauma that this whole society in Lumiere is experiencing, but also like the humanity, the bits of humanity that should be celebrated and that like deserve to have a place. We'll get more into that, but I think like yeah, even in retrospect, this prologue has only grown in my esteem.
Yeah.
That's why I recommend New Game Plus to
Mhm.
anyone watching, because you get to see like so much context that you might have missed in the first playthrough.
I think that to get to your point too, like the title of like what they have sort of said is going to be the series of games is Clair Obscur, and Clair Obscur means sort of that mix of light and dark. And there are so many ways that plays out in this game, but I think that it starts playing out here again in the prologue. You know, you've got these like super goofy things, like the dude in the trash can, the people having sex behind closed doors. But then you also have like these really dark things where that woman like sort of berates Sophie for not having children. And Mael, you know, is struggling to deal with these things in her own sort of push it aside way. And I think that it's sort of the beauty of that, the beauty of a very heartbreaking moment. I think it gets to what this game is. Before we move on from the prologue, because it is amazing and we could spend all day talking about it, how many of you fought the mime in
I
Lumiere?
didn't.
Oh yeah.
I skipped it.
Oh no!
I only realized that there was a mime like I don't know, like halfway in already in the game. So I was like, okay, I'll just come back to it for New Game Plus.
I thought that was just a regular
I
French guy.
I also missed it my first playthrough because I was thinking about, I guess, the review, and I was taking notes, but I guess I could have been more thorough.
No, there's a ton of stuff I missed because I watched my wife play through it. Which, you know, getting to your New Game Plus thing, I was like all the puzzle pieces are there, and just seeing how they all fit together in a New Game Plus run, or just watching someone else play is beautiful. But the mime is probably the most fun I've had playing a video game since I was like 15. I'm not kidding. Like I throughout like the first 3 hours of this game, and I think we can just talk about this now before we get into Act 1, is the combat. Because for all the storytelling beauty that this game has, another thing that is to me just like absolutely excellent is the combat design. And I have some issues with the balancing as we get into the later game, but early on, and I was really wrestling. Like, am I going to play this on normal mode? Am I going to play it on expert? I was like, nah, I'm going to try expert. And I got just destroyed by this game so many times. And that started with the mime. Because even though the mime only has 2 moves, he still just kept destroying me over and over again. But I love the way that this game is set up. It's like it takes the things I love from like a Sekiro, and some Souls mechanics, and we'll talk about that. I know it's sort of a facile thing to talk about Souls, but it's definitely here, y'all. The DNA is there, and then it takes all my like desire to look at turn order and think about the way that abilities synergize, and the way that you can make different characters synergize, and the way you can sort of min-max, and the way you can play with that. And the Pictos, I think, is a really cool idea where they give you stat bonuses, but they also, you know, if you wear them for 4 fights, you get to, you know, kind of keep that ability on, and you can use that, and you have different points that you can use and how you distribute those things. And I just love the combat system in this game so much. But also, like, even if you're not good at those things, you can go play on story mode, and like, you still have a great time with the story. And I'm sure there's still some challenge, I'm guessing, if you just can't dodge or parry. So what were your feelings about the combat here?
I had the advantage of playing the preview. I played through that 4 times, so I didn't have serious issues for like most of the game, I would say, until like the certain side content, I guess.
I've got like a big rock for a brain, so like every time they introduce a new character to the party, I was like a little bit overwhelmed. Like, oh, like they all have their own unique, RPG mechanic. It's like every character is coming from a different game practically, right? Between the 5 or 6, cast characters. So it took me a little while to like. It was intimidating at first every time a new character came in, and I'm like, I'll just stick to like my favorite guys that I already have. But like by the end game, it's like, yeah, you become so intimately familiar with like the every possible synergy of whatever 3 party mates you have at that time. And it is, I think, for me, like above anything, even above like the music, the gameplay is the best part. Like this is like this is what makes the game game of the year for
Mhm.
me.
Yeah, my two favorite genres are character action games and RPGs, and my favorite action game probably is Sekiro. So the fact that they gave me what is essentially like Sekiro RPG is just I just devoured it. I couldn't get enough. I did play all of Act 1 on normal, and it actually took me a while to get a hang of the parry timing and things like that, how to read like the animations together with like the sound effects well to be able to consistently parry. That took a bit of getting used to, but even just playing Act 1 and playing it as a more traditional RPG rather than like something where you really are forced to just parry and parry was pretty cool. But definitely when I got to the end, I was starting to steamroll things a bit, and I'm like, I'm ready to upgrade, and the rest of the game was just incredible. Yeah, the gameplay it slaps so hard.
Yeah, similar with Alex as well. I also kind of struggled at first because I haven't played any action game recently. But as soon as I got the rhythm of things, even a latter part of the game of how I played, um I think that everything just becomes a lot easier as well. Even before experiencing the entire gameplay and just seeing it through the trailers before, I wasn't so sure yet like how it would play out eventually. But yeah, this is the most fun gameplay I've ever had in a while so far.
It reminds me of like so many games I love. Like it's got the customization aspect of like
Mm-hmm.
FF8 and trying to like break things like the junction system. It has the sort of like cinematic camera angles that Lost Odyssey brought to its turn-based combat. And also like before this, I'd probably say like my favorite combat system in RPG was like Final Fantasy Remake slash Rebirth. But this, like you said, Matt, like this has each character having their own distinct play style, just like that, but put into like a turn-based context, with which I just absolutely love. Like, oh my god, it's so good.
And lest we forget the gun, right? Like the Persona 5 kind of guns.
Mm-hmm.
But
Yeah.
like that added so much to the game. Like my verso is like just shoot, 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 and then follow up, right? Like, and it's so satisfying just to hear like the ping, ping, ping. But yeah, like you guys, I was really awful at the parrying for the first act of the game, and I just dodged like when I could. I would just dodge until I got the hang of it. But I like that you only really have to parry the final hit in order to get the counter attack. So you could just like dodge, 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 parry. Um, I believe, but yeah, like for that reason, like Zach was saying, like I was giddier playing this game than I have been in like decades, perhaps. Like where I want to apologize to my wife in the next room, where like she can probably just hear me being like, oh, like every time I'm dodging an attack, and then like when you get that juicy like counter hit with your whole team, like Expedition 33 counter hits, just being like whoo, like
Oh,
it
Mm-hmm.
feels amazing, and it's so snappy, so fast, so stylish. Yeah.
yeah. The animations alone just deserve a shout out, especially because you're really basic attacking very little. You're mostly doing these special moves with like a loadout of like 6 different attacks you can equip to a character, and each one has like a distinct animation. Each one feels super satisfying to pull out, and yeah, just the animations bring me so much into the combat, makes me feel so involved. Yeah, love it. I don't know how many times I'm gonna say love it, but I can't say I honestly can't say it enough.
Yeah, it's funny because before we recorded, because a few of you finished relatively recently, and I was like, I wonder if everyone's gonna love this game as much as me, and it seems that you do, which is crazy because I freaking love this game, and everything you guys said about the combat is right. I just like, I think the animations are an underrated part of it too. Like it
Mhm.
just makes it like when you get that parry down and you hit back. My wife asked me, she's like, is the dopamine hit you get from perfect parrying better than when you get a new recruit and Suikoden? And I was like, no, perfect parry. 100%.
Wow.
Because it rips. It is so cool.
Zach,
Yeah.
that was how I felt when I was reviewing the game. Like I was hoping that everyone would like it as much as I did. Like especially you when you saw my review, because I didn't
Yeah.
want to kind of
Well,
oversell, as you
I
said.
trust your judgment. I was like, "Ooh, Zach gave this a 99," because I saw, I have access to the back end, so I can see reviews early, and I was like, "Oh man, oh," and I read a review, and I'm like, "Oh man, this game is it's going to be my whole personality," and I underestimated that.
Yeah, I also sorry.
God,
I also cheated and looked at Zach's drafts and saw the 99 and I was freaking out. I was like, "Oh my god."
No, 99 is the correct score.
I agree.
Mhm.
And I said this to Zach privately that I'm not sure if I would have had the guts to do it because you don't know, right? Like it's the thing that people who don't review video games don't understand this. But like you get a rebirth or you get a this even more, and you're like, man, I don't like I know how I feel, but like like am I just like hyping it because I got it early and it's fun and it's just mine right now? Like what's going on? And then throwing that 99 out there, it's just like a gutsy call, and it was right. The combat's amazing. We could spend all day talking about so many things. We haven't talked about the music yet, the visuals, the exploration. Oh, so much going on here. So let's go ahead and move into Act 1, and we can kind of get into some of the things that we love about the visuals and stuff like that and the game design. But I love that Act 1 starts the way it does. The original title for this game was actually just "We Lost." It's actually the title of a song for the super boss for Simon, which is an iteration on Envia Tame, which is really, it's like a darker version of it. You should go listen to it if you haven't heard it yet. But anyway, um, like you get off the boat and then you just see this guy who has this little streak of white hair, and it's like, how's this dude this old? And then he just picks up his old man cane and then just rips your entire expedition in half. And it starts at that place of hopelessness, and then Gustav has to move away. He eventually sees Lune when he's considering suicide because he's lost so much. And I think that it's just a really, you know, you think about what the expedition is, and you think about how hopeless that those opening moments are, and I think it really then contrasts with the beauty of some of these worlds you're walking through. Like Flying Waters is still one of my favorite zones in this game.
Mhm.
Just like it's so beautiful. True story. I was playing through that section, and I was playing it on a base PS5, and I was like, this doesn't look as good as it should. And we had this sort of a spare PS5. It's not really spare, but like my wife and I used to play 14 together on these two different PS5s, and I started playing on PC. So I was like, I think we could go trade these two PS5s in and go get a Pro because I want this game to look better, and I did, and it was the
Wow.
right call.
Nice.
Because the Flying Waters just looks so beautiful, and it does look significantly better on the Pro. But yeah, I just think it's a really compelling opening, and some of these zones are really beautiful too.
Yeah, that scene on the dark shore, they call it, like the beach where they land. It's like Saving Private Ryan. Like it's just like brutal. All the expeditioners getting ripped apart and everything. And then I was pretty shocked, like how real the Gustav suicide contemplation scene was, and the fact that they didn't just brush it aside. Like throughout the entirety of Act 1, like it comes up again where he like reveals to his squad mates like, hey, I don't know if you heard, but I had a really low place, right? Like a lot of the adult themes, like they handle it like in a really smart way, and they don't just like brush things aside conveniently. So yeah, I it felt so dire, like you said, Zach, and I was really like, oh crap, like can they do this? Like there's no way they can get to the painteress. I was swept up in it too.
Yeah, that massacre on the beach also, like firstly, the devs did an amazing job making it feel like a truly like traumatic event, and you weren't really sure what characters you were gonna see after that, like where the game was gonna go exactly. Because it just immediately made the game world feel like mysterious in terms of what it is. The fact that this old guy just showed up and has this crazy power. And obviously we'll get to it later, but the game world is very mysterious, and there is like a lot of backstory behind its very creation and what exactly it even is. But I wouldn't start guessing the correct details until much later on. But from this moment, I was already trying to guess what was going on, and that's just so engaging because, like, again, the game doesn't want to explain all its lore to you up front, so it just allows you to just play, feel it out, and start trying to like parse what the hell is going on in this world.
Yeah, the art direction of like keeping it desaturated and showing off a lot of um things in slow motion were like really powerful, along with the sound that Renoir makes with his walking stick or
Mm.
whatever
Dong.
you may call it. So it the this scene specifically captured me in regards to the lore, and it made everything a lot confusing to me as well.
And something that like is very Western is like how bloody the characters are for the entirety of the game. Like I'm like half the time like during cutscenes I'm like you got a little something on your lip there. Like it reminded me of like Dragon Age Origins of just like we did it everybody and like they're just painted with blood, right? I'm like God, like you should like really wipe that off.
It's funny too because like I was running like as high a damage build as I could, and that really means you want to keep your HP low, and that means that you always look as bloody as possible. So my characters were always bloody, and when they weren't, I was like, "Dang it! Now I have to go die to get myself back to 1 HP." But one thing I want to touch on real quick before we keep moving with the story, because this is where we first get to some of these spaces, like some of the dungeons is not really the right term for it, but sort of like these maze-like areas, zones, we'll call them, where you are getting in combat, things like that. You see, enemies on the field. And I think one of the most common criticisms of this game, maybe the most common criticism of this game that I see from people, is that there's no mini map in these
Mm.
spaces. There's no map at all. In fact, there's a map of the overworld, which we'll get to, but the dungeons themselves do not have a mini map. And I, to some degree, understand that complaint because I will admit that, like, I definitely like I missed a lot that I would have to go back for. I got turned around a lot, or I couldn't figure out where I was going, and I would like, for whatever reason, Cold Hearts, which is like an end game area, like I just feel like I walked around that place like 700 times before I
Yeah.
found the thing I was looking
Yeah, me
for.
too.
Um, and so I'm not sure what the better option is because I think that I kind of like that it forces us to explore. And I like that there's like that sense of discovery. It's sort of like the opposite of Final Fantasy VII on remake or rebirth rather on that front, where like it's sort of Ubisoft's it, right? Whereas here it is anti Ubisoft on that front, which I think is really interesting.
I
And so, what are your feelings on the lack of mini map? Do you have any ideas about how they could have done it better? Maybe, or are you totally cool with the way it is?
I personally strongly prefer that there's no mini map. There's no
Mm.
like UI stuff in the game.
Mhm.
You can open the compass if you need to know where to go for the main story. So like if you want to just mainline it, you can do that. And if you want to do the side content, you can just explore the world, which I think is like better designed than what we've been having lately.
I
when
completely agree. I really appreciate the lack of mini map. I think it made me pay attention to the environments a bit more, in the way that I would like pay attention to environment when I'm playing Dark Souls, which I haven't heard that criticism being leveraged against the Souls games much. So I'm a little surprised to see it here. Um, Maybe just like I'm sympathetic to people who are getting lost a lot. Like I think AAA game design has spoiled us in terms of like making everything as easily readable as possible. But for me, there's definitely I got a lot out of just feeling a little bit lost, while also just paying attention to the world and trying to make my way by actually looking at what's in front of me rather than looking at a little icon on my screen.
I was struggling with this thing too, like while I was playing, and I think my like positive bias towards the game won out in that I had similar thoughts to Alex of like, yeah, like it's really forcing me to pay attention. I feel this way a lot about games that don't have dialogue logs. You know what I mean? Like you can't go back. It's like, yeah, you really have to pay attention to the what they're saying. But I think in a turn-based game, a lot of the zones are very dark, and I was like getting spun around a lot. Like Zach said, in the what's it called, Wild Hearts or whatever, Frozen
Cold
Hearts,
Hearts.
Cold Hearts, that place, and also like the Visage Island. I feel like
Mhm.
I went down the wrong tunnel like again and again and again, and like just because you keep on getting interrupted by a different scenario for like the battle system, right? I think it is easy to get turned around, and I don't know. I think like if I'm looking at it more objectively, I do think it was a little bit of an annoying thing because like yeah, I do like the exploration, but I think the reason why they didn't put a mini map is because it would reveal the linearity of parts of the game, to be honest. Like, and I have seen people talk about like how yeah, like the story itself is quite linear, which I think it's like I love a linear experience. It's so perfectly crafted, but I do think they wanted to avoid that like Final Fantasy 13 problem of like this is beautiful, but if you look at it as 2D lines on a map, like it doesn't look impressive, maybe, right? I don't know what you guys think about that, but
Yeah, it's kind of fascinating how they managed to pull it off because they blended all these game mechanics, but it it, it it just works. And for me at first, I also kind of struggled with the exploration because of the lack of mini map. But then, like after a while, I've also realized that it does make sense because this is an actual expedition and it's their first time going out of Lumiere. So like
Mhm.
it's also in character in a way, but uh some as a completionist as well, from certain different games that I really like. I also don't. I'm not a big fan of backtracking things, but um, for example, it's like whenever I'd go in a certain area and I would trigger already a cutscene, and I would be like, "Oh shoot, I haven't explored the other path that I was looking at as well." So, like,
Yeah.
just those
Mm.
minor problems are like the only issues for me, but I also kind of let go of it already. The lack of minimap wasn't really a problem to me, but it was more of like I wish there was also like a list where you can see your side quests and stuff, and or like certain ways you can mark in the world map. Just minor things that I would nitpick.
It
Or
was
like
middle.
even like Dragon Quest where you can like get a skill that like tells you how
Yeah,
many
yeah,
like collectibles or items are left
yeah,
in the map.
exactly.
That would be nice actually, yeah.
From
Hmm.
my perspective, I had to get all the journals, all the music records, all the Lost Escrolls, all the Never on quests. Like I didn't know how many there are for some of them. Just completely blind, right? So that took me like at
That
least like one or two
explains.
extra playthroughs. It took me like dozens and dozens of hours. It took me days, right?
Hmm.
I enjoyed every second of it. And I thought it was just so much better that they did that. And I wish that more people would try it without a guide because you're just like every single journal you find, right? Every single like music record feels earned. And I don't think every game should do that, but I think this is a compelling enough game, right? With a compelling enough world where it makes sense.
Yeah, I could see any argument about it, and I think I respect it from a game design perspective, and I think it makes sense, and it definitely forces you to engage with the world in a way that you wouldn't normally, right? You're not just trying to move from like this path to that path; you're trying to really feel it. But I do think like some tiny things, like the fact that there's no fast travel in Act Two. Sometimes I was like, come on, like I have to go walk all the way back that way. But these are very minor nitpicks. It's not a problem for me. And once you get to fly with Esquie, which is delightful, I can't wait to talk about Esquie. Mes amis is awesome. So yeah, I think that I can totally see it. But one of the other things that I think is interesting, because now that we're sort of leaving Flying Waters, it also there are so many bosses in this world too. And one of the really fascinating things I think about progression in this game is that you can technically fight any boss at any level. There's no point at which like you just flat out cannot win. Like if you're good enough, you could go fight Simon with no pictos on and just parry and don't even have painted power on. It would probably take you 6 hours to beat him, but you could do it. But I think it's really cool that like you can run into these like bosses. You're like, I'm probably not quite strong enough yet. Like the chromatic abyss, the one that
Yeah.
Hmm.
sort of I don't know, it has like a pointy hat looking almost. Um, I was like, I am going to do this fight right now. And just the satisfaction that brought, but I also it makes it really like an engaging world to explore because there's always like another challenge around
Mhm.
the corner.
I love that feeling too. Like I love watching people do like a soul level 1 run of any Souls game. But the one boss that like I encountered that peeved me off like pretty hard because I loved like just like beating my head against the boss until I beat them. But I forget the name, but that like wall that crushes you after 5 turns. You
Oh,
know
the
what I
one
mean?
in the
Oh yeah, that's
cavern.
rough. Like the demon wall stuff. Yeah.
That
Mhm.
drove me crazy because I'm like, okay, I could just go like grind for like 10 minutes, but I was like, no, like I'm gonna beat him with what I have. And I never did. And honestly, I'm now like in the post game, I'm flying around constantly with Esquie and I'm like still looking I'm like, where was that bloody cave? Like I'm like, I want to go crush that wall in like one hit, but I have never gotten my revenge on it yet.
So
That's
I
literally
think
the name of the place. Crushing Cavern.
Crushing Cavern. Okay, I'm
Uh-huh.
coming for it.
I think this goes back into my earlier point because just throughout the game, I was thinking like, I wonder what this boss gets me. I wonder what this drops. It's so compelling when you like discover everything for yourself, right?
hmm
It's like in Dark Souls 1, like for example, in the Undead Burg, you turn the corner after fighting these like little low-level zombies, and you see your first Black Knight standing at the end of a narrow hallway, and there's a pickup behind him, and you're like, ooh, what could that be? And like, you're like, that guy's definitely gonna like rip me apart, but like, what is
And it's
that?
also kind of far from a bonfire too, so like you're like
Yeah.
it's like a risk reward that one, man. Ooh, I
Yeah,
know
there's a
I
lot
know
of that.
exactly what you're talking about.
But yeah, just yeah, in terms of like the Souls inspired design, those optional challenges that you can choose to bang your head against for like half an hour plus is very nice and something that I have a lot of trouble resisting.
I quick anecdote here. One of my best friends, I watched him replay Final Fantasy 9 years ago, and you remember like the VV jump rope scene at the beginning, the mini game,
Oh God.
Unfortunately,
and
yes.
how it's like if you get like 1,000, you get like some crappy item.
hmm
He started doing it, and he's like the biggest like masochist I know. Like I I'm like, okay, good luck with that, and I come back like after like at night. I come back like after a full day, and he's still doing it, and I'm like, you need help, man. Like I'm sorry, but like put it down. So he would love this game, I think.
And at least the challenges will be better than the VB jump rope
Yeah.
challenge in
Yeah.
this one.
And the
Yeah,
rewards
it's like
too. But
it's funny too because it's sort of on that same note. You guys all did the gestural beach mini games, I assume.
Yep.
Yeah.
yeah,
And
unfortunately.
I didn't really. I was like, screw this. Handed the controller to Alana. Like, you like platforming, have fun. But the one that I think people complain about the most is the volleyball one,
Oh
where
my
like you have
God.
to.
Yeah.
It's hard. That
That's
one's
hard.
hard.
The creator literally said he put it in because he knew people would hate it, but it would be like something that you would remember, sort of like Chocobo racing in 10, or like any of the end game stuff in 10. Honestly, like lightning dodging, horrible. Butterfly catching, horrible. Like every single one of those things in Final Fantasy X, which obviously this is heavily inspires this game,
So
is there.
I left the gestural beaches until like the post game, and I did all 4 of them, or all like 6 of them today. And
Oh
like, let me tell
wow.
you, that fucking Donkey Kong like barrel thing, like, oh my god, I hate it. Like, I'm like, this is like, I don't know, this is outrageous. I was like really upset, but I beat them all today. And when I got to the top of like the climb, like the one I'm like
That's the
furniture
best
climb,
one.
I did it only in like maybe 2 or 3 tries, but like my hands, I was like wiping my hands the entire time on my pillow.
Yeah, the fact that you can look down and see how far down you can see,
I never looked
like
down.
it made me a little sick, actually.
It was nerve wracking.
I did on my first try, but my palms were getting super sweaty. I was refusing to look down at the in case like it would throw me off just seeing how far up I am. I was like taking like breaks to just like prepare myself for the next little bit, but oh man, that like getting to the top of that in one go is actually one of the most satisfying moments I
The
had in this
dance
game.
party.
No joke.
Who did
The
you guys
plat-
use for the platforming? What
I mean,
character?
Lune, I think on the very first one makes that. I actually think the log one is, to me, one of the worst ones because you have to be like a little bit to the left side of the log to not fall.
Yeah.
I actually thought that was harder than the steep climb.
The volleyball was my main problem. I had no
I
problems with platformers, but it was really just the volleyball.
I just thought they were fun diversions. I didn't realize how much of a problem they were until after release.
It reminded me of the horrors I had in playing Rebirth mini games. So I'm just glad they didn't go all the way, just like
Yeah.
Rebirth. So
Yeah, fortunately, there are not 50 gestural leashes.
Oh my god, yeah. Phew.
Just 5. It's just like just enough pain.
But there's a trophy for beating them, so it's like it's
Yeah,
non-optional for
yeah.
me.
like-
You gotta get it.
So this is a total aside, but it's because I'm thinking about it right now. So you know how you get swimsuits from all of those, right?
Yeah.
If you put every single character in a swimsuit and you walk up to Renoir for the final battle, he's also wearing a swimsuit.
No,
You should go watch a
video
of
it.
Really?
It's fantastic.
Oh my
yeah,
god.
I'm definitely gonna do
rules.
that on this
Oh my
playthrough.
god.
So yeah, I mean, we're talking about the gestural beaches, but we haven't actually talked about the gestrals, who are delightful, and even more delightful when you kind of understand what they really are. So like we go, we eventually find out that Mael's around. Like we look at this note, like, hey, she's there. We find Mael, and she's in this manor with this like creepy curator who doesn't speak and doesn't have a face. And you're like, what's going on with all this? And it's all very confusing. Which again, we talked about like the mysteries, the way that set it up. But then she's like, we need to go, to the Gestural Village. And she knows it was interesting. If you go back and play it again, like Mael knows a lot more about the Gestrals than she would have had time to realize, given the amount of time that she had here. And you're like, oh, that makes sense, because she knows what these things are. But the Gestrals are awesome. And basically, like we realize that we need to talk to the Gestrals because we get access to Esquie, that we'll talk more about in a second here. The Gestrals are so fun. The village, I think, is too large. And again, I got lost in a lot. But just like these, like, paintbrush looking things that want to fight all the time. They just are always interested in fighting, and they say the goofiest, weirdest stuff. And in a game where things are so dark all the time, but they're not really, because we get these extremely goofy, really weird creations of the Gestrals, and I just love them.
It really gave me Nier Automata vibes, like with the robots in that game. Like the Gestrals had the same, like a similar kind of like cutesiness to them and like silliness to them that kind of brought levity to like this really dark, bleak world. But yeah, I thought they were really funny. But what I was wondering, like, what language they speak. I'm always trying to decipher, like, is it French? Is it English? It's like a mixture of both.
I think they're just blabbering things.
Oh,
I think it's like some kind of like French-based gibberish, because there are definitely like French words that I was able to pick out, but they are
Yeah.
not French sentences at all.
no, no.
The real question is, how do people understand them when they talk?
It's Star Wars rules, right?
Doctor Who rules, yeah.
Yeah.
God, that tiny Gestral is so awesome. What's his name again?
Noko.
Not
Yeah.
cool.
Oh, Noko's the best. But yeah, I definitely, I think the Nier Automata comparison is good. I will just say that the robots in Nier Automata felt more immediately, like it was more immediately clear what they kind of meant in the larger context of the story. Meanwhile, here, at first I thought the Gestrals, I'm like, are these creatures just silly for the sake of being silly? It almost felt like a bit of a tonal clash. That I wasn't sure about. But then, like, along with like everything else in this game, like it, in the end, it all reveals like a larger purpose and connection, which is just incredible.
I too thought like the Nevrons were going to be revealed as like it's like the souls of the dead kind of thing, but nothing like that.
I think the change in tone is welcome because the entire game was just so dark up to that point, and you get like a period of like reprieve before the next part. So I think it was just a great moment.
I do remember in the village, apart from getting lost, a lot of times I tried challenging the chief and I got my ass kicked.
Yeah, I mean, you'd have to be amazingly good at this game to beat Gulgra in Act 1.
Yeah.
Because Gulgra's hard to read anyway, so yeah. That was the first time where I said, I don't think this is for me yet.
Yeah.
And I gave up.
For sure.
Which is too bad, because in the tournament, if you use Mael, you get her best weapon. And I didn't, because I'm an idiot.
Oh my god, I didn't.
I had to go back and fight Golgra to get it in Act
Mm.
3.
Which weapon
Um,
is that again? Because
it's
I
the
did get it.
Medallum. It starts you off in Virtuous Stance.
Yes, that's right.
Oh.
Yeah, it. If you have it through Act 2, it makes Act 2 significantly easier, in my opinion, which we'll talk about when we get there. But yeah, and I think that I don't want to get too far into this, but I think one of the things that you start seeing here, and it's confusing. Like, why? Like, what are these things? Where did they come from? How did this fracture work? In the same way that like RPG logic would always work, right? You're like, well, like, you don't really think much of it, but it is confusing because we've played so many RPGs. Like, oh, it's a funny thing, right? But the way that you see the personalities of the painters um, reflected through all these different things, like the people of Lumiere or Aline's creation. Verso, the child, creates these like lovable doofus, want to fight you all the time things like an 8-year-old would. Esquie being just like this, the most lovable character in anything ever. And just seeing the way that they reflect personality in those clashes becomes really fascinating to me.
Yeah, and like later in the game, I think it's when you're conversing with Ciel for one of her relationship conversations that it's revealed that Esquie is like created to like comfort people if they're like feeling like depressed or
Mhm.
considering like self-harm or something like that. Like he's created for the purpose of just like wanting to be alive and like kind of like loosening up a little bit and seeing that not everything is so serious. I just thought that was such a beautiful moment when they revealed that. Because
He's
like
Yeah.
yeah, like he was like serving that purpose in the context of the story. Like whenever you had a cutscene with Esquie, you just like bring this like lighthearted joy to like an otherwise very dark world. So the fact that that's all built into the lore is just incredible.
Yeah,
the
and I also love the part that they revealed that he was the one who saved Ciel.
Mm.
Yeah, they foreshadow that really well. You're right, Tim. I like that they didn't just leave that hanging, like oh,
Mhm.
you're afraid of swimming or whatever, or like you're a bad swimmer, and then like 20 hours later that's resolved. Yeah, I
Mhm.
thought he was the perfect mixture of like Baymax and like No Face from Spirited Away.
Oh,
You know what I
true.
mean? Like that kind of.
That's a good way
Mhm.
to put it, yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, but he was like, and like his accent and everything like that, like his nicknames for everybody, Francois and like Fran and yeah, Cece, Verver, you know.
He's my friend.
Yeah, yeah. I can't
the,
be
the
mad.
the dude who voiced him in English is also the dude who voiced him in French.
Oh
Um,
wow, wow.
yeah, which is really cool. Yeah, I mean, Esquie is, I mean, it's just such a pure delight in the fact that he's obsessed with rocks, the way that a child would be. And, he's so delightful, but I also think that there's something kind of sad about the fact that Verso, as a child, thought that something like Esquie needed to be created. Like, if you're
Mm.
feeling sad enough to want to kill
Mhm.
yourself, like Esquie is there to save you. And this probably 8-year-old child creates that. And like, either they're feeling that way, or you can imagine this family's messed up, but
Mhm.
that he might have seen some of the stuff, and so it's like sort of there's a darkness to it as well, to this, the most lovable and loving character who's extremely wise and says things that you have to logic your way through, but they always make perfect sense. When he calls Verso mean, but sometimes mean isn't mean.
Yeah.
It's just SK is just so great. There are some people like selling plushies of SK online that are not real, and they're like, no, don't worry, we're gonna make a real one soon. And I will never buy a plush faster in my life than SK.
I also
He's the
feel like I just need a little notebook of just Esquie quotes. Esquie
yeah,
motivation quotes.
he's the best airship I think in JRPG history. You know, like the first one to have like
Vroom vroom vroom.
personality. Yeah, yeah. And like the way
I
he
mean,
swims, his little legs like kicking, always crack me up.
great boat too. Time for a
Yeah.
swim. He's just so fun. And like the logic of everything, like he needs his rocks to get his powers. I mean,
Uh-huh.
it's all so delightful. Hey, look at us. We actually get to the end of Act 1. So we've kind of bounced around, but to kind of keep the story on track here, we get to the end of Act 1. And I'll admit that I thought that some of like the Gustav's death was sort of. I didn't know it was coming. I promise I hadn't looked, but I was like, I feel like the kinds of conversations he's having with Mael, like when he says talking to her in the camp, and he says like, if you see Renoir, run, and they have like that sort of that fun banter as well. And so I think that they definitely foreshadow it. And then like when you discover everything else about the death of Gustav, it becomes so much darker. That Verso let it happen and did it on purpose. It's really really fascinating, but it's such a gut punch, and especially the fact that Mael's losing another brother. Um, there's a lot of layers there, but even without those layers that you discover later, Gustav is such an amazing protagonist and so lovable and so kind, and like the sort of person who you feel like you really would follow in this situation.
And the other characters are constantly like, Gustav would have loved this when they find like a new beautiful
Yeah.
area. Like his presence remains. But I had the same like feeling you had, Zach, of like I, as Mael was kind of shifting towards the role of protagonist, like she was doing more in Act One. I started being like, Gustav's really not doing much here, you know. And so yeah, when it happened, I was kind of like, but like I wasn't sure how they were going to replace him, so I was kind of surprised that they didn't foreshadow Verso like in some way in Act One. Like, does he pop up visually in Act One, Verso? Like over.
Nope.
Briefly,
Oh, where?
briefly he does.
Mm.
It's I try to remember where. I think it is. Oh, it's when you get her from the manor. You see him.
Ah.
You see like a sort of a long shot. And you see him very briefly.
Okay.
So he's very very vaguely foreshadowed here and there, and like quick. I think there's also one where Mael sees him in a fire in one of her dreams. Like again, very brief shots of Verso.
Honestly, at first you won't even know, even though you'd spot it, because Gustav and Verso kind of look alike in a
Yeah.
way. So like you would also confuse them at first.
And he immediately like I like how they just automatically carry over like all the pictos and weapons that you had from Gustav, but they
Exactly.
adapt them to like Verso's playstyle with like the what do they call it, like the rank progression thing.
I'm also probably one of those who who saw it coming in a way, like ever since they had that conversation talking about running when Renera would appear and all that. And I was always wondering, like, since I was also grinding a few levels early on, and I kept unlocking more skills with Duni and Mael, but I was wondering how come these are the only skills that um Gustav can only unlock. So
Yeah.
so I had this gut feeling, but I didn't expect that they would do it in Act 2. So I mean in
Also
the end of Act 1. Sorry.
I had that strong suspicion, like even at like level 1 and even during the preview, because like certain characters had all their skills and uh,
Mm.
Gustav did not, and also he didn't scale as well. Like he had kind of like a limit in terms of how
Mm-hmm.
strong he could get.
And
So
the
I
fact that
thought like maybe maybe he gets some superpower or he dies, just like
Mm-hmm.
purely from gameplay perspective.
he's voiced by Charlie Cox, who is in like high demand right now too, like with Daredevil coming back. I honestly thought, I'm like, wow, like how'd they nail Charlie Cox for like a whole RPG? And then I'm like, oh, okay, they didn't, like from like the business standpoint, but they did get Andy Serkis for like the whole shebang.
I didn't realize it was him until the credits. I'm like, Jesus, Andy, your voice is just so versatile.
Yeah. Can I make a minor gripe here? Like, because it happens in the story from like this point, like up until the end of the story, but especially like Act 2 and like the end of Act 1.
Mm-hmm.
The story wasn't my favorite aspect of the game, and like I'll give my major gripes like with the ending, I think, but I got strong and like I love this game. It's game of the year, but strong Kingdom Hearts vibes of just like villains walking out of black portals and like masked silent people watching and like soulless clones of the heroes and villains. Like I just thought like this is giving me like strong Kingdom Hearts nonsense vibes for a little bit, you know. Did you guys ever feel that way? Like, I was intrigued the whole time. I'm like, who's that? Who's that? And I'm theorizing, but I was kind of like, okay, this is very, what's his name? Tetsuya Nomura.
I will just say, I think personally, I think the second playthrough is even better than the first, and I think it like wrapped up so nicely. So I guess I had a different perspective.
Yeah, I do sort of get where you're coming from, Matt. I wouldn't say the story was my favorite thing, just like from Act One alone. Like I said, like I didn't really understand the bigger picture of the Gestrels, even though I liked them, like I enjoyed talking to them. Then there's also all this like other mysterious stuff happening that I really wasn't able to connect. I mean, like you're not supposed to, but by the time everything like ties together in the end, like all those critiques were just like completely subverted and turned into like enormous praise for the game.
Yeah, end of Act 2, I was like, okay, like it's coming together, like definitely.
Yeah, I don't agree, but I understand your point because I think that the one thing that, as I was playing, so I guess we can kind of move into Act Two. So Verso, is there. You discover that there's a relationship between Verso and Renoir, and I think that understanding the context of those conversations just makes them more powerful. Getting back to Zek's point, but Verso comes in, he doesn't really say like why he's there, but he just like kind of gives you like these vague things about immortality, blah, 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 about Expedition Zero. And for me, as I was playing it, without having full context, it felt weird in Act Two to have Verso as the protagonist, essentially. Um,
Mhm.
because Verso obviously you can control whoever you want out in the field, but in camp, it's Verso, and
Mhm.
Verso's the one having the conversations with these people. It makes sense, obviously, later. As I was playing it, I was like, oh, like, why is this dude who I don't really know like the protagonist? Like compared to Gustav, he's not nearly as compelling. He's funny, he's charming, but like, what's going on here? But
Or
then I
Mael,
don't know, like
yeah.
the meta narrative element of it ends up, I think, making it totally work for me. And I don't know, like I was really compelled by like those black, or those black and white dreams that Mael was having by every appearance of them. And I think at this point too, I sort of had a sense that this was like a creation or a painting, and so some of that lack of logic worked for me, and it comes together way better than any Kingdom Hearts game does.
Oh yeah,
Mhm.
definitely. Yeah.
But I understand your point.
I like you kind of are scratching at my like major gripe, like which I'll talk more about later, but like I do feel like all the characters aside from Verso and Mael in your party are kind of shortchanged. I feel like they make you care so
Mm.
much about their problems and then they just kind of sweep them away in too abrupt of a fashion. I feel like I mean you get a lot of like depth from the relationship conversations that you have at camp, but like Gustav and Sophie, I'm like, oh, okay, like and I know like it's real in that way, like death and grief in this game is a very real thing, and so it is like, yeah, like life isn't tied up fancily with a bow, but I did feel a little bit like dissatisfied of like, what about CL, what about Lune, what about Monoko
Mhm.
and Gustav, of course, but
Did you do the relationship quest?
yeah, I did all those, like maxed them out, and like those were great conversations, like depth of character, but maybe we'll talk about it when the ending comes, but like I feel like in both potential endings, the characters I mentioned are kind of just given the short end of the stick compared to how strongly they build them up for the rest of the game. I'm like, oh, okay. Like they're nothing more than a painting or a fantasy. You know what like, well, I don't know.
I personally think it's even more interesting that way because the world the actual world of the game is not the canvas, but that's a conversation we can have
Yeah.
later in the.
I demand for a DLC for the side characters.
Yeah, yeah.
Sort of as I was playing the game, like I knew, Matt, that some of your criticisms would be common ones, and I think they're very valid, and we'll talk about that when we get there. But I want to kind of I feel like Act Two, from a storytelling perspective, it's interesting because you're kind of getting bits and pieces here and there that are coming together, but it doesn't have that sort of immediate sort of adrenaline rush of Act One, and it's sort of like I think Act Two really is more interesting on a second playthrough. But as soon as you get Versa, the first thing he says is like, "Hey, we need to go get my friend Monoko." and we can all agree that Minoko is excellent. Correct.
Yeah.
Did anybody ever really figure out how to use Minoko?
I ran him for most of the
Yes.
game. Yeah.
I used him a lot.
You just
Oh
gotta
yeah,
collect
yeah.
the feet,
He
Zach.
becomes very powerful.
Mhm.
You need more feet. That's the problem.
One of my favorite things later, when you find out that Clair is the one who created the Nevrons, is that he's like, why did she make the feet so sharp? Every time I'm polishing them, I hurt myself. I think it's delightful. But yeah, I mean, I think that his sort of, it's a little bit of Blue Mage, but not really. Like, you don't have to do anything to get the ability. It just has to be in the fight. I didn't use them. And if you go to the Endless Tower, you could basically get almost every single ability except for, I think, one or two maybe in the
Mhm.
game. And I sort of saw how he could become powerful, but it gets back to one of the things that Matt was talking about earlier. Like, by the time I got Minoko, I was like, okay, I got my head around Lune, who we haven't talked about how amazing she is yet, but she's so good. And I've got my head around the stains, and I got my head around sort of CL's foretell mechanics, which take a little while to get going. The rank mechanic made sense to me pretty much immediately because it's pretty simple. In my L, just get her in Virtuose, keep her there as long as possible. You win. But like with his, I was like, oh, I got the masks and you got this, and it's like, all right, I'll just bench him. But he's so fun, and his relationship with Verso, I think, for all the issues that Verso ends up having and all the things that he does that some might consider evil in some ways, like I think that his relationship with Minoko really helps to sort of humanize him, even when we don't really know him.
Same voice as Francois too, Minoko. But I love at the end of like the Max relationship conversation that they have, which I saw today,
Mm.
and he's just like, come on, let's snuggle. Like,
Yeah,
like
little spoon.
yeah, that's right. Little Spoon. I love that they don't say like who Little Spoon is.
Just from a gameplay perspective, he does have very high potential. Like I used him for basically the entire playthrough.
Yeah, I was mostly like using him. Like, definitely, I had some crazy damage output with him, but I actually built him as like kind of a breaker. Um,
Yeah.
like to like
Mhm.
just focus on like building up break bar, and then because he has that gradient attack that is just absolutely demolishes stunned enemies. So if you just like quickly break an enemy and then like can pull that out, it's only one gradient charge. Oh my god, it can wreck some tough fights for sure. But other than that, like he is just like a very hilarious character. That like you're explaining, Zach, just is a necessary part of developing Verso as a character as well, because Verso, like, he's a character who's been part of this world for like over a century at the point that you get him in the party, and his relationship with Esquie and Minoko are so key to making that feel real and to making like his long life and the more like brooding aspects of his personality make sense and feel sympathetic, and that's an essential build up towards the end as well.
A lot of people online are also like comparing him to Kimari.
Yeah, I felt that too. Yeah, like I honestly felt before Minoko came in, I felt like it. I thought to myself like it is weird that it's just humans, like because everything else is so crazy, right?
Mhm.
But yeah, I really liked Minoko just for his relationship with Verso. He doesn't really interact with like the other characters that much, but the scene where he like brings the wall down on everyone's head by accident because he's trying to show off when he transforms into like a giant
Yeah.
monster,
Yeah.
and he's like I'm sorry, like like that was a very like humanizing scene for this Jestrel guy. But
I was just gonna say, like, it does make sense that like a young Verso boy painted him, because he's cool, but like he's cool to like a point that gets like silly. So I just thought that was a really nice like extra touch to his personality.
he's an action
Yeah.
figure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Well, it's actually, I think Minoko and Esquie were the names of the two families' dogs. Um,
Yeah.
Right.
which I think is a really cool little detail, and you can see the dogs in the family portrait too. But yeah, I think that Minoko is hilarious. Like all the stuff with Minoko and Golgra is really funny. um, and Golgra, who's obviously just totally outclasses Minoko and just like hates his guts. Golgra is such a fun character, and I was not prepared during the relationship building when you have to fight Golgra with Minoko and Verso, and my Minoko was not built up yet. I was like, oh no, I was just getting wrecked over and over again because I couldn't dodge Golgra's insane attacks. I think that Minoko is great. But then after that, we start we discover where we're trying to figure out sort of how to get to the monolith, and then we go to On Lumiere, which is where the party split happens, which also kind of drove me crazy because like it was like my Verso and my Mael were way stronger than my other party because those were the people who I had built up. But then you go through Old Lumiere, you get to the end, and then we discover as well that Verso is the son of Renoir, and then we get, and we haven't talked about this yet, we get the instrumental version of the best track of the year, which is Une Vie Tame, I believe is how you say it. And you fight Renoir because you're trying to get to the heart of the Paintress, which is held in the manor in Old Lumiere. And I think the Renoir fights are great. I think Renoir is amazing. We'll talk more about how I love both the painted and the real version of Renoir. I think are both phenomenal characters. And what's really interesting too is if you go back and play it as well, like the conversations that Renoir has with Verso are extremely similar to the conversations that real Renoir has with Alicia or Mael at the end. Like the tone is the same. This idea that I'm trying to save my family, this idea that Renoir in both versions is someone who is trying to save his family, really gets hit on really well here. And the music rips. The music in this game is so freaking good. Renoir is so freaking good. We're talking about my two favorite things at the same time. How am I going to do it? But it's amazing. So thoughts?
Little peek behind the matte curtain. When I play games now, I go into the settings and I turn every sound down to like 80%, and I keep the music at 100%.
Yep, same.
And like this like Renoir fight, like throughout the whole game, like I was like blown away by the music. I love the mime fight music, by the way. Like that's a real bop.
Oh, that's so fun.
But like
Minoko's theme is also dope.
Yeah. But like the Renoir one, like when it came on, like especially the end of Act 2, like it just blew me back, and like I was like my heart was rushing, and like I didn't really have like much difficulty with like the story just because I was doing like the optional bosses, so like my characters were pretty powerful. So like I beat most encounters on my first try, and like it just went along with the music so well. Like, and I love that every phase of the battle, like the music progresses to like the next part. And I not in the instrumental version, but like Victor Borba, the like the kind of screamo vocals that he has, amazing. And like I've never been so pumped up in a boss fight. Like I think this is the greatest boss theme ever. Period.
Yeah, there's a moment in the second Renoir fight where it's a shift to the second phase. So you get him down, you get his health down, and then he stands back up, and then he pulls that lion
Yeah.
thing for the back, and the music goes quiet. And then when he stands back up and he heals, like the music comes back again, and I heard it like 15 times because he just wrecked me. I heard it like 15 times, and I was like, I like sat up in my seat every time, and like I was my wife was playing through the game, and I was like, when you get to the Renoir fight, you have to tell me. And she didn't tell me, and I was in the office, and I was grading papers, and then I heard the quiet, and then I heard that music kind of come back up, and I was like, oh shit. I was like, I ran into the other room, and I was like, I gotta see this.
How could you
It's so
do this to
freaking
me?
good. It's so good. Yeah, the music, from a broad perspective, the music in this game I think is excellent. Like even from, you get the Alicia theme on or Alicia, the Alicia theme on the front of on the title screen, and the Lumiere theme is just beautiful. Just the way that Testar, who again, it's like he was like a guitar instructor before he did this soundtrack, which is just insane. He uses vocals and oftentimes very simple instrumentation, but like this big swelling operatic movement. Because technically, Un Vie Tame is part of a 33-minute song. It's like the middle movement. because of We Lost is part of it, and then on the Piandre, which is the final boss theme, all part of that 33-minute track. And apparently it took him 2 months to write it, and he just he was killing himself over how amazing it was. And you hear him talk because the vocalist, the female vocalist, is her name is Alice Duport Percier, I think. And when they first met, they started he let her sort of do some of the composition and the way that it all worked together, and it's just it goes so hard that if it didn't work, it would be terrible. It would be over the top, but because it works, even the overworld map themes and that beautiful vocals, it's so good.
I'm walking around my house humming opera and like in the shower yeah. It's beautiful. It's heart pounding at times. It's intense. The guitar solos in that 11-minute track that we were talking about, the boss theme. Just fantastic. 8.5 hour soundtrack. But Patrick has a great review for it. And Zach, you had an amazing interview with the composer.
Yes, and in the interview, the composer said that he worked closely with the developers. For example, with Siren, when you're close to the boss, you can hear the singing, and then when you're far away, it's just the guitar and the instrumental. And that was very interesting.
It was touching to hear about how he showed the whole soundtrack to his dad, and after his dad listened to the whole 8-hour thing, he came back and told him his favorite track was I forget the title, but the one near the end, the vocal track. But that was really nice, I thought.
Yeah, we had 8 questions, and I wanted to ask 80.
That's definitely fair. Yeah, just to touch on the Siren thing, I thought it was so cool the way that song adapts to where you are in the level. I thought it made the progression of that level so much more compelling, just with that nice little touch added to it. And that song in particular was stuck in my head, I think 3 entire days after I had completed that level. So I felt like I was actually enchanted by Siren with that song and that dance, because I could not get it out of my head. Not that I had a problem with it, but yeah.
Comparing to other RPGs that I've played, where that had really stellar soundtracks as well, it's I could usually pinpoint certain tracks that are very memorable to me. But in this game, my problem is all of them are so really good that I can't even pick which one is my favorite track.
And in JRPG fashion, very melodically driven, unlike a lot of Western RPGs. But which, by the way, I was going to ask you guys, what are we determining this thing, the genre? Is it an FRPG or is it an RPG?
It is a
perhaps?
JRPG.
Yes, that is the correct answer.
RPG.
JRPG. Coming soon to Rhythm Encounter, I'm sure. Music from Clair Obscur.
Oh, yeah.
Although some of the tracks I sent the boss theme for Noir to Mike Solbata, the guy who runs Rhythm Encounter, and I'm he's like, can I get some context for this? It's too long, I can't use it, but I just want some context. I'm like, nope, you don't get any context, especially because I know Mike hates spoilers. So I was like, I'm not telling you anything, not even that it's a boss fight. But yeah, the music is just it's impeccable. I can't believe they did it. And if you look at his favorite games on the Sandfall website, he says Xenoblade Chronicles, Nier Automata, Hollow Knight. I'm like, yep.
Mm-hmm.
You listen to some good stuff. And it's funny, even in the interview, he seems to sort of want to put Nier Automata over here as an inspiration for his music, but it's so embedded here. So you have that fight against Renoir. You don't beat him because he's immortal. You can't do it, and the manor flies away. And they're like, "Oh man, we're screwed. We don't know how to do this. We don't know how to get to the monolith. We don't know how to get to the Paintress." And then Lune, who is always so consistently suspicious of Verso. Love Lune. She's so good. She's so consistently. And she's like, "No, you're lying again," because Verso hides truth with lies. You're lying again. There's another way to do it. There's these axons. You have to go do it. And Versus like, yeah, we can't take those guys down. I'm like, no, we can. And then so you have to go to the 2 different axons. And the first one is called Visage. It's the one I did first. And then the second one is we were talking about is Siren. And you discover later that Visage and the Axons are creations of Renoir, and Visage is the way that he sees Verso, and Seren is the way that he sees Aline, his wife. And I hate to keep saying this over and over again, but I think it's really fascinating to go back and play through them again, and you can sort of see like how Visage is a piece of Verso, the real Verso, and how Renoir sees the real Verso. And he talks in one of the logs about how if you always have a mask, you never get to the truth in your art. If you always have a mask over your art, and and there's a lot of indications that Verso and Renoir were not close in real life, and I think that you can sort of see the way that he feels about the way Verso approaches art there. I think it's fascinating. I will admit that I did not love this dungeon. It's probably my least favorite in the game because of all the color switching and because I was getting lost so often. I did actually find that frustrating. But the Seren one, phenomenal. So that's enough of me talking about Axons. Go.
With Visage, you could technically just do the boss without exploring the dungeon at all. It's a harder boss, but technically the entire dungeon's optional.
Yeah,
I wanted to see all the content.
yeah. I loved like the visual design of Visage, like especially like it was so creepy, like how the mountain face was just like faces, human faces like twisted in like anger and sadness and happiness. It was I feel like they should have left that for the second axon, but it was just like more creepy, I thought, and more imposing, but and longer too, but both were fantastic just from like a aesthetic standpoint.
Yeah, another nice little detail in the Visage level is that in each of like the three like mask sections, so, like joy, anger, sadness, um, like the idle animations for like the Nevrons just in the field are like different. Like they'll either be like acting happy or like miserable, and like they don't even really like react to
I
your
didn't even notice
presence.
that.
Or
That's
like they'll
amazing.
be fighting each other in the anger one. I thought that was like a really nice detail that added a lot to the level.
And my favorite enemy in the game, I think, I don't know the name of it, but like that creature, it's in the Visage area. It's like that creature that looks like a centipede, and it has like
the
a human.
I hate that
contortionist.
The
fucking
eye.
Did you just say your
The
favorite enemy in the game?
Yes.
The nightmare fuel? Is that what you mean?
Yeah, I thought it was so creepy and like memorable, like just how like he's like twitching and like you have to like time the shot to get his eye for like massive damage. Like I thought that was so cool. Yeah, very Dark
Oh, you can
Soulsy.
shoot his eye?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh, I
Yeah.
didn't know that.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so
but
cool.
the thing is, you can only shoot it from like a certain character's perspective. So like if Verso's on the left, for example, like he can sometimes shoot the eye, but sometimes you have to get like whoever is on the right to shoot it.
Yep.
Like I loved that aspect of it. Like I thought that was one of the few bosses, that and like the Lamp Master boss, like that used the gun element like really creatively. But
I farmed that because it drops the weapon upgrade material, so I
yeah,
fought the contortionist a lot of time.
I love that thing.
I couldn't have done that. Yeah, I mean, I like the Visage fight a lot. I think the Seren fight is more memorable because it is the first one that I think is extremely cinematic. This is like big thing, and when there's one particular attack where she has a lot of dancers sort of fly in and they run across the screen, like all five of them. And I died to that attack so many freaking times. I could not parry it for the life of me. And then my wife did it and she's like, "Oh, I got it first try." It's like, screw you, man. So it's just like it's so big, and like the phase transition is amazing, and I think it's the most compelling dungeon in the game too, with those floating things that sort of move you around it, and that the music that we already talked about, and what it tells us about Aline, I think is phenomenal in the way that she's trying to be a sort of a puppet master herself in a lot of ways within the painting. It's just, I think it's just beautiful.
I remember when I got to Seren, I was just thinking like, how is this game so good? Why is this game so good?
Yeah, it just like goes ridiculously hard on just like a boss. It's so cool. But then we get the moment where the curator, who's the one who is creating this weapon from the two axons, creates it, gives it to Mael, and then you are able to break down the barrier going into the monolith. And I think the monolith is the longest dungeon in the game. I think. I am sure I missed a ton
Felt
of
that
stuff
way.
there. I was like, there are so many, because like you basically get like a tainted version of every single area before it, and it felt long, but it felt like a final dungeon. Like, I'm actually curious, Zach, for you, when you went through the monolith, did you think that was the final dungeon?
Yes, I
Okay.
100% did. I thought that there might be, some more just like post game stuff because, there's like so much more in the map, right? But I thought in terms of the story, that's probably the end.
And I mean, like functionally, it is pretty much like the final dungeon because it the end of it does see conclusion to like the paintress kind of what becomes the sub story. But then like the real final dungeon is quite short in comparison, so it did feel like this is like the big bad castle at the end. But really quick, sorry to circle back, but like I wanted to say something about the duelist boss. Do you got like
Oh my goodness, I
love that
forgot about
boss?
that fight. That was the first wall in the game for me, man.
It was
I
so
was like, oh my
horrific,
gosh,
the setting, like, it was very Dark Soulsy, like, it reminded me of, like, Pontiff something something from Dark Souls 3, like, the dual
Sylvain,
wielding.
I think.
Yeah,
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 yeah.
and, like, that was just, like I was like, "Oh my god," like, Mael is going through hell, like, it was really, like, brutal, like, the setting of the fight, but, like, intense and, like, the party-wide, like, victory animation where they're, like, very anime style, like, throwing swords back and forth and, like, slashing together. I just thought that was such a amazing moment. Yeah, one of the many, like, boss fights that blew me away, but very intense.
Super bloody fight.
In a pool of blood, yeah, like,
Yeah.
it was, like, unusually dark, like, that's why I was like, "This is very Souls-like," the game was dark in Act 1, but, like, this just felt like they're in hell right now, like, yeah.
Yeah, I think that Act Two, while I think from a storytelling perspective, it might be the weakest of the three acts, it is. It's got like five just incredible bosses. You've got that. You've got the first Renoir fight, which I love the setting there of the manor in the background, just amazing. Then you get Visage, you get Siren, then you get the second Renoir fight, which is my favorite fight in the game,
Mhm.
and then you get the Paintress or the Aline fight. And it's just like these are all fights that are strong enough to almost be like final boss level design. The Monolith, maybe not my favorite dungeons because it's so long, but I thought it was cool, the idea of like sort of you start getting a sense here as well, because as you're walking through the monolith, you see these scenes of people together, and I think it makes it. At that point, I was like, okay, it is very clear to me that this world is not real. It is a
Mhm.
painted fictional world, and I was afraid that my reaction would be like Matt's, and I'm like, oh, it was all a dream, blah blah blah.
Mm.
I hate that kind of crap. I ended up having a very different reaction to that, and we'll talk about that. But and then we haven't talked about this. We see this sort of shadowy child throughout,
Mhm.
and as you talk to that
Oh.
shadowy child, you consistently are getting more information. And to me, and we can start talking about this now, like to me, I love like the vibe of those things and the nature of like me not understanding exactly what's happening, but it doesn't do it in a way that I found annoying or
Mhm.
frustrating. And I like that when you get to the monolith, you start to really put a lot of the pieces together. But even after you kill Renoir, like it's still not 100% clear what's going on
Mhm.
until after you beat the Paintress. But to me, like it just made me more and more interested.
Yeah, and even long before that, you get like I think they call him the Fading Man, who looks like the curator, and I guess it's implied to be like the real Verso, whereas the child is also the real Verso. But like it will
I
only.
think the Fading Man is Renoir, I think.
Oh, okay, that
I
makes
could
sense.
be
That
wrong.
makes sense too, because
Yeah,
like
I could be
either
wrong.
way, he'll only talk to Mael, right? You have to switch to her, otherwise, no one can understand what he's saying. Like, yeah, I do love like the way they drop the hints, like they spoon feed you the story or drip feed you the story in a satisfying way. But yeah. So the whole twist of it, like being a painting and like it, nothing is real that we've seen so far. It was very like it's been done before, of course, but like like Star Ocean or something. But I I I mean I don't want to jump into it now with the ending. For me, I thought like the whole theme of the game at that point, I thought what they were trying to establish was like, okay, it is a painting, but it's real to Mael and it's real to Goose. Like, their lives and their pain and their struggle is very real. I thought that's like the theme that they were driving at, and then I feel like that thematically was kind of tossed out later on. But like, I thought like, oh, that's like a really bold thing to challenge the audience with, because usually when we find out like, oh, it was all a dream or something like that in a movie or whatever, our tendency is to be like, oh, like what a waste of time, even though fiction is a dream anyway. But just adding that extra layer of frame narrative to it, I thought that was kind of an interesting topic they decided to tackle, but that ended up not being the theme that they were driving at. Grief was the overarching theme, above and beyond that.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you, and I think that that was sort of where I thought it was going thematically. But I also am going to disagree slightly in that I think that that still is a piece and a part of the decision making process that we have to make later.
Right.
And so we could kind of talk about that. So obviously, a lot of stuff happens at this point, right? So we fight the Paintress. When you're fighting the Paintress, and I think that fight against the Paintress is very cool and very challenging. Anybody else struggle with the Paintress as much as I did?
It was probably the main boss fight that I died to the most, yeah. But even then, like, it didn't take too many times. I feel like every boss fight that I was like dying to consistently against, like, I ended up beating it at just the right time for it like not to like get old at all. And also like for it to be like really satisfying as a challenge. I just thought like ultimately, I mean, Act 3 aside and all the game-breaking stuff that happens then, like, the balance felt quite ideal throughout most of this game.
Yeah, I felt the same way. Like, it was like every fight was like, I won by the skin of my teeth, but like I felt like, oh god, if there's a second phase to this, I'm done, right? But like, there wasn't that many like surprise second phases beyond the Renoir like lion coming out of the portal, which was the best fight to me as well. Like Zach said.
I thought it was a very fair experience overall. So I didn't have any like serious issues in the story, but I think like all the boss fights were very interesting.
Uh, I also didn't really struggle with the fights like on the latter parts of Act 2 leading up to Act 3. It's probably also because like I spent a lot of side stuff before even heading to the monolith, because like I felt like heading to the monolith would mean that I might see the ending soon. So like I also went around the map as much as I can and even tried to do a lot of optional bosses. And there was this one optional boss that you can find in the sea. Was- I think it was,
Sprung? Did you do
yeah,
Sprung before
Sprung.
the end of Act 2?
Wow.
That's
Yeah,
insane.
I actually tried
That's
to
awesome.
challenge Sprung, and that the reward that I got from there really carried it
I
all the
mean,
way
Yeah.
to
that's the
me.
cheater picto, right?
Yep.
Wow.
So yeah, that changes the game dramatically. That
Yeah.
had to have been a hard fight, because I went into it and I was like, oh, let's give it a shot, and then I saw the damage output from
Yeah.
Sprung, and then I saw how little damage I was doing to Sprung, and I was like, nope, I'll come back later.
Tin, you are terrifying. That's that's.
yeah.
I just beat that boss like today. That's crazy.
Yeah,
Those are the things that like I I really like in the game, because they give you the option to like um play around with the difficulty all throughout the game. So uh, it's up to you if like you're the kind of player who likes to beat yourself up when it comes to these things and you get satisfaction from doing them, or you have this option to like go normal and um make things easier for you. So yeah, I do like that that you have this kind of freedom compared to Souls games when they're in general they're really very difficult alone, and that discourages a lot of people. But in this game it's like it's more accessible to everyone.
Yeah, agreed.
What's
yeah, I think
interesting is like I didn't engage with the RPG elements very much at all. I just played it straight like a Souls game. I didn't like look at the pixels too much. I was just like just parry everything if you can. And that was just my approach for the entire, at least the main story.
Well, if you can parry everything, that really breaks the entire game.
Okay, everyone. So Tin and Zek are like video game phenoms.
Well, I mean, I mean this very positively about you, Zach. When you're like, oh, I didn't struggle too much. I'm like, you're a first week Savage Raider in 14. I am still on M6. And so if you play 14, you know what that means. But my point is, like, but I agree. Like, there's so much skill expression that you can have, but you don't have to. And for me, like I don't actually think I'm that skilled of a player, but I love getting destroyed and finally overcoming that. And the game, it just
Mhm.
has so much flexibility in the way that you can approach it.
Mhm.
The progression is just feels so well thought out. To just continue on what you were saying, Tin, like the way it like opens like non-linearity up to you, like kind of piecemeal, feels so purposeful, and it gives you a little bit more agency as a player in terms of like what kind of experience you want out of the game. Ultimately, like I did a couple of side quests, but in the end I was prioritizing like trying to get the most challenge out of the main story content as possible. So in Act 2, and you were saying this earlier, Zach, like um, in Act 2, it's like the backtracking is annoying as like Esquie can only like swim at that point, but like it almost felt like a deliberate design thing to me in terms of like, yeah, you can like start exploring the world, see some side content, try to get through it. But also like this isn't the point of the game where we're like trying to encourage you to do that necessarily. So like just having that as being the way that the world exploration opened up, like it made me just end up doing most of the main story content. I got the exact level of challenge I wanted out of that content, and then in Act 3, I did just like end up going towards the last level. After just doing a couple of little side contents, like basically the companion quests. Um, but now I have all this other side content just waiting for me after we finish this podcast. So that's awesome. I love how there's this kind of like optional non-linearity in an otherwise pretty linearly designed game.
Just for
The
reference, what level were people when we finished the main story? I think I was around like 58 or something in that area.
That was way too freaking high. Because I told Alex, like, if you want this to be challenging, you can't go do. So I did like Frozen Hearts.
Oh wow.
Mm.
I did. I fought Golgra on the duel because I wanted that weapon for Mael. Like I did a lot of not all the side content, but I did enough of it. Like even just doing Frozen Hearts because you get all those weapon upgrade materials there too.
Mhm.
Um, I literally I gimped myself so hard for the final boss. I was like level probably 70. I unequipped a bunch of Pictos. I only used regular attacks because I wanted to see it because like especially because this is pre-nerf Mael, who with
Mm.
that weapon like was doing double damage in Virtuos on every attack. You mix that with Stendhal and like she's hitting like without even trying, you're hitting like 30-40 mil
Holy
easy.
Wow.
I think the record was like 5.5 billion before the nerf happened.
Jesus,
Whoa.
that's
So my point
insane.
is like you needed very little, and so even after the nerf, and I don't want to go too far into this, I generally agree with you quite a bit, Alex, that I think that the progression here works really well. But like to me, like my JRPG trained brain, I was like, I got to Act 3, and I'm like, oh, I can fly now. I can go do all these things now,
Mhm.
but then I'll go to the final dungeon. And then I realized very quickly that like I was like, oh no, I'm deleting everything. So I guess I better go do the final dungeon because it's definitely not going to be as hard as this. And it was such a pushover that I thought it was a little anticlimactic. So I think that I understand because like that you're allowed to go do those other things, but to me like that's the way that I play these games, and I didn't know it was going to completely remove all challenge because I was really struggling at the end of Act 2. So I was like, oh, let's go do some side content. And then I was like, oh, oops. So yeah, I think that the end game balancing could still use a little work. Um,
Did
because
you?
I realize you could say like, oh, like, well, you broke it on purpose, and like I really didn't. Like I just tried to do some basic math, and I was like, oh, I'm destroying everything. I didn't look
I
up any builds or anything.
sorry, I had a different experience because for my first playthrough, want to take notes about the story, because I knew there's a New Game Plus, so that's the playthrough where I wanted to focus on the side content. So I was only level 30 or like 32 at the
Wow.
final dungeon, because like I
Wow.
wasn't
Oh, I
fighting.
bet that was rough.
I wasn't fighting anything. So basically, you have to parry everything, and I didn't have like a special loadout or anything. So like was as like hard as it could, like the story could get, I think.
That's crazy, Zach. You are like a machine. That's really impressive. But I were you guys wearing the Final Fantasy 16 outfit for Verso?
Of course.
Of course. Okay. Zach, I thought that was, made
Oh yeah,
specifically for you in
of
mind.
course.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, I it's funny that you say that earlier, Zach, about how like you do all the side stuff first. Like any JRPG I play, I go to the final, like the finale when it's available, and then because every game like reloads right before the final fight, so I do the side stuff, but I want to experience it, yeah, like without blowing away the final boss usually. But this game especially, I mean, 5 billion, that's wild. I don't even know, like, how does that appear on the screen? Like, is there enough room
I
for
mean,
that?
when you do the hit, it doesn't show up. You know what I mean? Like it'll show up at the end where it says
Yeah,
like
the
highest
report.
damage, and you can
Yeah.
see there what the highest number was. We could talk a little bit more about some of the progression stuff, but we are running long here, so I do want to talk about sort of the meat of this, right? Which is the end. We've kind of hinted and talked around it. But after you beat the paintress, you discover that the paintress was actually protecting the people of the canvas against Renoir, who they are this married couple who are in a battle, and the battle is like Renoir trying to remove Aline from the canvas, and it turns out that this canvas was their child Verso's. We discovered that he dies when he's 26. We probably looked about the way that the painted Verso is, and so all like the people you've met, like Alicia, if you do side content, you even meet painted Clair, Renoir. All of them are painted versions, so sort of approximations of who these people were from Aline's perspective. And I think it's interesting. Manuel says at some point, like the real Renoir isn't as cold as your Renoir to Verso at some point, which I think is really just like interesting. And you discover that there was a fire where Verso dies. It was at least Aline seems to blame Alicia for it, and Alicia blames herself for this fire, and she's damaged very badly in this fire. She's burned. She loses an eye. She loses the ability to speak. And Manuel, as we know her, is sort of a reincarnation of Alicia as she put herself into the canvas, trying to save Aline. And there's all this stuff on the outside. The writers we discover are the ones who come in and attack the mansion after fooling Alicia in a way that we never fully understand the reasoning behind it, or who the writers are. I've seen all kinds of crazy theories about who the writers are. I'm sure in the sequel the writers will be involved. Because there's going to be a sequel to this game, obviously, at this point. You discover all that, and then so once you remove Aline, basically like Act 3 is very quickly, it's like, no, we're going to go to Lumiere, and we're going to, because Renoir is released, the one who's trying to erase the canvas, and we're going to go stop Renoir from erasing the canvas, or at least that's what Verso says he wants, because Verso's known all along the truth of this. He hides truth with lies the same way as a child he did, apparently, as well, which I think is really interesting. And so at the very end, we have to make a choice. Verso, it turns out, wanted to erase the canvas all along. He wanted to release himself. We discover that there's a piece of the soul of Verso, who is still painting. And Manuel wants to maintain the canvas. She wants to stay here. She wants to live in this space, not just, I think, because of Verso, but because she gets to be on this power trip, this power fantasy of being like this cool girl who has her voice, and she has all these people who she loves as a replacement sort of for the pain and the trauma that exists outside of this space. And to me, I thought this twist was stunningly brilliant, because I was afraid that I wouldn't like it. that I would think it was fake. But I think at the end of the day, when we think about like, is the painted world real or not? I think that the game does acknowledge that these people are real. They have agency, the same way that if there were creators in our world, right? Like we would be real and we have agency. And I don't want to get too far into the religious elements here, but like the painters are gods, and these
Mm-hmm.
people are just as real as you and I. The same way that people, never mind. I don't want to talk about another game that was referenced earlier here, but it has echoes of one that I don't want to give anything away. And so I think that regardless of whether you choose to erase the canvas or not, it's all real. And so to me, the way that the grief is sort of writ large all over this world, and the way that you see the influences of all these people, um, is to me so powerful that it overwhelms any concerns I have about the characters not like the characters of this world not necessarily being quote unquote real, because to me so much of the weight of that choice at the end, and I struggled with that choice at the end. Like I usually don't. I'm like, what's the best ending? I'm gonna pick that. I don't care. Like I got up, I walked around, I made myself a sandwich, opened up a beer. I was like, all right, like what is the right choice here? Because like you're almost committing genocide by doing this. You're destroying this whole world, but you're also sort of enslaving this little boy. And you're not facing reality. You're not living with reality. And to me, I chose the Verso ending, and I think a lot of us did as well. And I think that it was just so heartbreaking. And then like those last shots in real Lumiere or Paris or whatever it is, of the family are just so beautiful and heartbreaking. And as you see those people get erased, it's almost like letting go of Verso's childhood and who he was. I'm oversimplifying what is extremely complex here. But yeah, I was kind of want to talk through the things that you guys liked about it or didn't like about it in Matt's case.
Well, I mean, yeah, beautifully said, Zach. Like, and it's, listener, please let it be clear. I love this game, and I thought the story was like far and above like most game stories. That's why we're talking about it now, and that's why I wanted to like, get your guys' opinions on this. I also chose the Verso ending, uh, because I was like, I watched the Mael ending later on YouTube, and I was like, okay, like she has reverted to like a mad god, and she's like Verso's pained cries of like, I don't want to live like this, don't make me live like this, when she like forces him into her painted world. That was like heartbreaking enough to be like, okay, maybe from like an I don't know, maybe the game is framing Verso's ending as the good ending, but like the same as you, Zach, the problem I had was like both endings were so morally ambiguous that I was like, damn, like no matter what I do, like I'm I'm hurting the people that I've grown to care about, and I think that's a brilliant thing for a game to do. Like, so yeah, please, like I do love this game's ending, and I think it's like well worth talking about, and I love that it's not a clean good ending, bad ending. So it's brilliantly done.
When I arrived at that choice, because I played through the whole game with my fiance, I handed the controller to her,
Mhm.
and she chose the Mael ending, so we went with the Mael ending. And I guess the kind of the justification is that like, what if our world was painted, right? Like we're
Mhm.
still real, right? This world is still very real to us, right? If there's kind of a god out there
Mhm.
like keeping this universe intact, we would still, I guess, want to exist, where I guess most people would. I think that's, there's justifications for both
Mhm.
endings. In New Game Plus, we went with the Versa one, and we actually thought that one was better, like the more canon ending, but that was kind of the justification at the time.
Yeah, I just finished the story like a few hours ago. I just have this one question that I'm not sure about. Like, Mile was able to bring back Alicia and Ciel inside the canvas again, but like I didn't understand the part wherein like if this whole canvas of Verso is gone, can't they just repaint a new one again and bring back some of these characters? Or are or these characters are completely gone already?
I think that goes to like what Mael tried to convince Renoir, like the real Renoir, she's like, Papa, like let me leave the painting, and like mom can leave the painting and like refresh herself. But he's like, no, like she's just gonna get hooked back on the like escapist
Ah, okay.
addiction. So it's kind of like, yeah, she can repaint everything, but it's like the cycle of uh, not
Mm-hmm.
facing reality continues.
Okay,
World
that makes
kind of
sense.
exists as like a part of like Versal's soul. So like if you created, like for example like Noko again, they might not
Mm-hmm.
have the
The
same memories
same.
or
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, yeah.
anything. So
Yeah, I think that point about like the the little verso soul like being gone, like I don't think the world could exist in quite the same way anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Do think that's the key detail. Yeah, for me, I thought everything came together so well here, including like details I wasn't sure about at first. Like it felt like a little bit too easy after the dramatic twists at the end of Act Two that Lune and CL were just brought back so easily. But then like
Mm-hmm.
I realized this is to show like Mael's power as a painter, her like godlike power, and the power of the canvas to give you exactly what you want, which she was just able to like restore just like that. And with that kind of power, like you could really see how a person could be caught up in like illusions and self appeasement and things like that. And I think that's ultimately what Verso wanted to prevent in his ending. And I
Mm-hmm.
do think the Mael side quest in Act Three is a key part to also understanding the decision even more, because there she proves to be a godlike force in her decision to gomage Alicia, and especially
Mm-hmm.
in the decision to not give Verso any agency in terms of being able to like say goodbye. Like she just kind of like made that decision for herself. Like it's like
Mm.
she's completely caught up in her own desires at that point, and I think that really makes an impression on Verso that justifies his ending a little bit more even. With that said, like I still completely struggled with that last choice. I did end up choosing the Verso ending, but even right now, like 12 hours after I finished, I'm not sure whether it is the right choice. And I think that speaks to how well the ending is written, because Verso also like does pretty much the same thing that uh Mael did to him with Alicia. He makes this choice at the expense of everyone else in the canvas's wishes. If you've been like talking
Mm-hmm.
to the other companions in Act 3, like you see like their desires for the future, Ciel's desire to see her dead husband and even maybe her dead child again. Lune wanting to have some sort of future and to get like a little mini version of the real world put into the canvas so that she can like learn more about the real world. He robbed them of a life they fought to earn throughout this entire game. And while like Minoko and Esquie understand and embrace him in that ending because they acknowledge him as his own person and they know his suffering, and everything he's seen, he is a hypocrite still with that ending,
Mm-hmm.
because he's done essentially what he was critiquing Mael about just a little bit earlier.
Mm.
Um, but yeah, like the question is like, do the Descendants deserve a future together, or should Mael as a victim who managed to overcome her trauma be given the right to whatever she desires? Because that's ultimately the argument she makes to Renoir in that last moment, is like I became myself through my experiences in this world. She was self-actualized in a way that allowed her to, yeah, work through that trauma. So does should she have agency to make the choice that she wants at that point, or is she still just a child that other people can make her choices for her? And she does seem like she's smiling in the Verso ending when they're at the funeral for
Mm-hmm.
the real Verso, which made me feel better about making that choice. But it's still like, man, like at the end when like before things get erased and Lune's just kind of like sitting at a distance from Verso,
Oh,
So
like
good.
it's,
yeah,
Uh-huh.
yeah.
It's
oh
a
my god,
phenomenal moment.
that hurts so much, especially because if
Yeah.
you do the romance of Lune and they're talking about
Mm-hmm.
like a future together, like that is such a brutal betrayal. It's actually insane.
Mm.
Um, but yeah, even to like just go back to what I said earlier about like the prologue setting everything up so nicely, I think the game does a phenomenal job structurally in terms of like introducing the reality of the canvas as a legitimate reality through Gustav and everything, the happiness and the tragedy that he experiences, and then zooms out further and further to show like this reality on top of like the painters and Alicia and Mael. And then it's just like really up to the player what reality is more valid, I guess. Um, yeah, this is one of my favorite video game endings ever.
Yeah, and I think that a lot of what you talked about there gets to why I disagree with some of Matt's points, which is that I think that the game does still, to the end, take great pains to make very clear that these people are real and they have a future and they want a future.
Mhm.
And so I think that makes that final choice so devastating, because the reality is, like, if they stay in this world, like, the world is still going to be erased sooner or later. Mael is just going to sort of extend the life of this painting for a little bit longer. And what does that mean? What does that life look like? These people still don't have the agency that they would have, because you have these gods who keep controlling them. And so I think that it's very critical of the Dissandras in that way, but also very empathetic towards them as well. I think one of the things that I find most fascinating is that this game can never really look directly at the grief. It's almost in the way that we can't look directly at grief. Like the pain is so raw and unimaginable that, like, and the beauty of this world sort of it sort of reflects the beauty of the feelings they had and the beauty of what Verso was, but also the beauty of the things that are created around them as well. And the way that it reflects grief and it sort of puts it through this prism so consistently, I think is also like it's really interesting from like a general psychological perspective. I don't know. I'm rambling here, but like it's I don't know. I like it a lot.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
you guys nailed it with like the talk of agency and how like when everything boils down to it, it's like the game is about a conflict between mother and father, and then like brother and sister, and yeah, everyone else is just like a pawn in their game. And I don't know. I think it is a very interesting thing that like it's meant to be unsatisfying, but we know like from the beginning that these people are doomed, and like their life is, they're living on borrowed time. You can see it painted on a tree the whole game. So I guess in that way, it's like it lives up to the promise that it makes in the prologue, kind of like what Alex said. But it was just like, I think we've been, speaking for myself, I've been so trained by like Hollywood, but also by JRPGs, where it's like, with the power of friendship, we can fight against this god and like overthrow like our role as pawns in their game. And in this game, it's like, it turns out that both main characters are just like vying for that godhood. And like,
Right.
I felt like that was like, I mean, I imagine like these characters are pretty well developed and beloved, I'm sure, like CL and Lune, for example. I guarantee if there's a sequel, they would show up in some capacity. But if not, I mean, Sophie never showed up again, and Gustav never really showed up again beyond their cameos in Miles Ending. So I thought that was pretty ballsy of the story to do, like to drop the audience in that way. And just like grief, like it is very real. It's just like, yep, people come and then they're gone. Everyone's dying eventually. Like in that way, it was kind of like you have to, like Zach, you said, you have to face the grief head on. That's why I did choose Verso's ending as well. So for that reason.
Yeah. Like for me, I already like have gotten really close to Mael throughout my entire playthrough, but as soon as I had to make a choice, um I I immediately thought of like processing grief in general. Like there Renoir was already like like lecturing them multiple times in regards to their mom going through versus death, and like it just like how he was like explaining that it's like a never ending cycle, not until they actually end it, or like to actually let go of the entire canvas. Or and I thought that um the game was also like showing, not teaching, but showing you different ways of like handling grief, or how people handle grief. Like with Mael, she wanted to extend it a bit further because she wasn't ready. But with Verso, it it already took so long for the entire family to hold on to him. So like, yeah, I actually didn't have second thoughts on this. Like, I deeply empathize like with Ciel, with Lune, and everyone else like in that world. But like, I also thought like this is never gonna end. So that's the reason why I just picked the Verso ending.
After talking it through with you guys, and like sorting our thoughts, I do feel a lot better like about the ending artistically. I'm like, yeah, it is pretty brilliant. And like the fact that like if it was like a tidy like, hey, everyone's back, like let's all have a party, like I would be like I would forget it the next day. But like the fact that I'm still thinking about it a
Yeah.
week after, like that's pretty incredible.
Despite like how they managed um pulling off the character for Verso, even though like I didn't love him as much as I love Clive in FF16, I also do agree that he's very well written in the sense that the game managed to make me hate him and love him at the same time.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
Yeah. Same way that you
100%.
hate and
Mhm.
love Renoir.
Yeah.
yeah, exactly.
And the
So
Mael ending, the same way you probably hate and love Mael.
uh-huh. So I do like the writers or like the director like managed to capture that, because like even the endings, like there's really no good or bad ending. So
What
I
it's up
only
to you.
love Esquie. He's the only one that we fully love.
Yes.
Okay, yeah.
Full blown absolute love for Esquie.
Except he's terrible at keeping a secret with like the whole wine bag. But
Oh, that scene's so delightful. Like, how could you make Esquie better? Fill him with French wine. Yes.
What's interesting is that there are no like true villains in the story. Like
Mhm.
everyone is
Mm.
justified in their own way. You can make a justification for anyone's actions
Mhm.
in this game.
Light and dark, Clair, Obscur, right? It's in the title.
Yeah. I mean, even Clair, who, unless you've done more side content, you haven't seen as much of her. And we don't have time. We are running long here, but we don't have time to really talk about some of this stuff. But like, the way that the lore is built into this game, I think is fascinating. If you like, the lead writer said that like she basically like went like generations back with these people, and I think that it makes the storytelling so strong. But like Clea, who we barely see, like she's handling her grief in her own way too. She's like dealing with it very practically. Like she creates the Neverons to help Renoir because he's not powerful enough to take on Aline himself, because she wants these people out of the painting so she can go to war against the writers. So she deals with it very practically. She's like, this is what needs to happen. Boom, 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 boom. And then you've got Renoir who wants power and control. He's like, I need my family. I mean, like I don't know how many times Andy Serkis says the word family in this game, but it has to be at least 100 times.
It's Vin Diesel levels for sure.
Yeah, I mean, Matt, it's funny. Matt said in our private chat before this, like Renoir was right, and that was like before my wife played the game. I was like, the only thing I'm going to say is that Renoir is right.
Hashtag.
Renoir is. I think we barely even talked about maybe my favorite antagonist. Speaking of, I mean, he really is the antagonist, right? At the end of the year, when Clair Obscur wins like every single freaking award at RPG Fans Game of the Year, I'm confident that Renoir will win Best Antagonist. So yeah, there's so much. I feel like we've barely scratched the surface, but we're running short on time here.
Just say we recorded 2 episodes.
We're just helping
Two
you out,
parts.
Jono.
It represents the game. It's like the part 1 is the light, and then part 2 is the dark. Clair Obscur, baby.
This got pretty dark, yeah.
Yeah. So I do have one final question for you. And I know so many other things I wanted to talk about. I'm so sorry. But one final question, which is, what do you want? Where do you think Sandfall is going to go next? Do you think they're going to make a sequel to this? What do you think that sequel is going to look like? What do you want them to do next? Do you want them to stay with turn-based? Do you want them to do something wildly different? What do we think is coming up for them?
So I have 2 thoughts on this. One is, they mentioned they might be doing DLC. I think with DLC they could have a look at the other expeditions. 'Cause, all the journal
Oh.
entries, there are so many like compelling stories, and I almost wanted
Did you
to.
guys find the one where they're all naked?
Expedition
Yep.
60. Yeah, 60.
Yeah.
That's right.
Sorry.
And
Keep going.
we had a forum where we can just submit bugs directly to the developers, and they, to their credit, they would actually like patch everything I mentioned in the day one patch. I almost wanted to give them suggestions for DLC because I was so invested in the game, just through that forum. But those are like my thoughts on like the smaller content before like another like mainline game in the series. I guess I think they're probably continuing with kind of the writers.
Okay, here's my pitch. Ready? Mael's ending is canonical. So she's like the next villain in the direct sequel. And then Clair, she realizes, oh, great, now I can't get my sister out of the painting. The only person that can pull her out is if I rebuild my own version of Lune and CL and Gustav. And Clair runs as the main hero of this team to like dethrone her sister because she needs her help in the writer war going on in the real world. Like, and then Gustav steps into the real world and he hugs. Oh my god, I got it in my head right now. Sandfall, I'm available.
For me, actually, I know for myself that I do want more of this game, but at the same time, I also want to see them try something new,
Mm-hmm.
like something completely different from this. But I mean, it could still be turn based and with all the action time battle thing. But it would be nice to see like a new, fresh of story again.
Yeah, I think I'm with you there, Tin. Like, as much as think there's enough to this world to continue it, I hope they move on from like this immediate cast of characters, at least with the exception of maybe like having Mael be like some kind of surprise villain in a sequel, because I do think like there's a lot more to explore with like the writers
Mhm.
and the painters. I don't know if we could get like a game from the perspective of whatever the hell the writers are doing, but that sounds interesting. But since they're the writers and not the painters, I'm not sure if that would have to just be like a Twine game, because so you only interact with text throughout the game. But yeah,
Visual
I'm
novel.
I'm really interested to like for them to develop more of that like kind of larger picture while like letting this immediate canvas kind of go.
Mhm.
I will say I didn't view Mael as the villain even in her ending because like in the real world she has nothing,
Mhm.
right? She doesn't, she lost an eye, she can't speak. Like it's a tough pill to swallow. I think of her as kind of addicted to this world,
Mhm.
right? Because in this world she has like her life basically.
Oh yeah, I definitely didn't mean to imply that. I see her as a villain in this game, but in terms of like a sequel, if they were to like carry over one character, I just thought that she would probably make the most sense to do that in some kind of role.
Yeah, and there are so many layers. Just getting to what you were just talking about there, Zach, that you could talk about in terms of the way that we interact with art as well. I've heard people talk about this as like the canvas is like an MMO. You sort of lose yourself in. You get to choose your own character, and um, I think that there are a lot of philosophical layers that you can go with. And if we had more time, I would love to talk about them. But I want to thank the four of you so much for giving up your evening or afternoon, or actually evening or morning. Zach had to wake up real early to come on here, and I really appreciate it. I think the conversation was great, even if we covered maybe a third of what I wanted to talk about, but that was inevitable. I'm so sorry, Jono. Let's go ahead and talk about what's coming up next, and a little go into housekeeping. So if you want to get in touch with us, you want to get in touch with Jono directly, you can email him at podcast@rpgfan.com. You can also follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Threads, Twitter, Blue Sky, Twitch, YouTube. We're usually RPG Fan or RPG Fan.com. We also have a Discord that you can join and talk to some of us who are on there. We also have a shop, two different shops actually. One hosted by TeePublic, where you can buy T-shirts and mugs and things like that. There's also one hosted by Hyperplay RPG, where with our review card book with over 300 pages or almost 300 pages of those review cards that you might have seen on Instagram. We also have 2 other fine podcasts. Rhythm Encounter, which is the other Monday of every other Monday. The schedule's been a little weird because of this, and also not E3, which is coming up soon, as Jono calls it. So I believe next week is another random encounter. I can't keep track of the times at this point. But on a Monday, you're going to get a rhythm, or you're going to get a random, and rhythm is about music. Every other Thursday is Retro Encounter, which is hosted usually by me, about retro games. And so you can check that out if you think I did an okay job of hosting today. If you want to review us, you can review us on Apple Podcasts, YouTube, Spotify. We love feedback. It's, if the podcasts are there, we're there. You can hit us there. And let's talk about how to get in touch with the individual panelists, starting with you, Matt.
Yeah, I guess just I'd like to direct people towards my writing at RPG Fan. So just check out some of the reviews I've been doing lately, like Oblivion Remastered and things like that. Check me out there.
Cool. And Zach.
Yeah, I agree with Matt. You can find me RPG Fan.
I really like the approach this time. Like, just go read my writing. I don't want to talk to you. It's awesome.
I don't want to fight about Clair Obscur anymore.
Tin, what about you?
I can find me at RPG Fan Discord. I'm literally named Tin there. Or you can send me a message tin@rpgfan.com.
Perfect. And Aleks?
You can just email me at alexfraniczek@gmail.com.
Aleks doesn't want you to read his writing, so.
No.
And if you want to get in touch with me, you can email me, ZachW@rpgfan.com. I'm also on our Discord as ZachW. I check it sometimes. If you DM me there, I'll see it eventually. But also, you can read my writing on RPG Fan or listen to Retro Encounter. So again, thank you, all 4 of you, so much for coming on, talking about this game. Game of the year for me, probably my favorite game, period. It's maybe not the best game I've ever played. I feel like Nier Automata is like a perfect game, but like this one, just like it does all the things I want a video game to do, and it does them extremely well. So the real question I should have asked for the discussion question is this the best RPG of all time, or is it the best game of all time? You decide. But in all sincerity, thank you so much for coming on, and listeners, whatever you're playing, I hope you have fun.